Jennifer says, "Happy Tuesday, good viewers." Hey guys, welcome back to the Good View Woodworks channel. Sorry it has been a little bit since I've posted something, and that's just for a lack of time. And so I just wanted to say I apologize for that, but I have a lot of stuff going on right now. Personally, not bad stuff, just working with kids and trying to find enough time in the day to get everything done. So just to kind of, if you guys would do something for me, just tell me where you're chiming in from and tell me if you've worked on anything in the past week. HB Woodwork says, "What's up?" HB Woodworks, what's going on? I think that's the first time that you've joined, and if it's not, sorry, I think it's the first time I've seen you comment. I don't recognize that name, but I'm glad you're here. Thank you for chiming in. And Steve says, "Howdy from North Michigan." HB Woodworks from North Carolina. What's up? I just drove right through there. Once again, thanks guys for hanging out with us. To kind of give you some background on what's happened the past couple of weeks, this weekend we actually went to my grandfather's house in South Carolina to pick up his mom's car, so my great-grandmother's car. He's moving. I think he's 82 years old. He doesn't have time to mess with cars, and so he wanted to keep the car in the family and asked that I would if I would keep it in the family and I would take care of it. If you guys don't know, one of my backgrounds is automotive technician. I went to NASCAR Technical Institute right after high school, and so I have a lot of experience with cars, and I enjoy working on cars. I don't enjoy maintenance, but I do enjoy the occasional working on cars and stuff. So Tamayo 1980 says, "What's up, dude? Been a while." Coleman says, "Montana. No, I've not found any time." He hasn't worked on anything either. Kelly says, "Woodstock, Georgia, epoxy coasters." She's been making epoxy coasters. I pulled 2 coasters out of the mold just today. Steve says, "Yes, I've done some epoxy art, 24-inch tabletops." Oh, that's awesome. Tom Smith says, "Long time no see." And Tamayo says, "Eastern North Carolina, working on my second table." That's awesome. And they say, "Yeah, regular maintenance sucks." Yes, it does. So what I ended up getting was a 1966 Plymouth Belvedere Ii. So if you guys don't know anything about them, I'm learning about them too. The last time, so the Belvedere II, the 2 is just a trim package, so it's one up, I guess, from the base model. So it has the 318 V8 in it, not so much of a hog. But it's 4-door. The interior's almost in mint condition. It's really nice. The exterior is what needs some work. Not very many dents and dings, but the paint job is not original. It's the only thing not original. So we're going back original, hopefully, with the paint. So the last time I got that car running was I was 19 years old. I'm 33 now. So was that 15 years? It hasn't run 15 years, but it's been garage kept, and I have memories of when I was probably 5 years old riding in the back of that car. As a matter of fact, the inspection sticker says 1994 on it. So it's crazy. Carrie says, "Mowing the lawn in Michigan, listening in on Bluetooth headset." Hey Carrie, how are you? Coleman says, "Nice car." Tamayo says, "Wow." Tom Smith says, "Nice as old as me." Man. Steve says, "How fun, old school." Yeah, for real. And Diego, I guess, hello from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I wish I could speak Spanish. Sorry. I'm really rusty there. I know a couple of words, not very many. So I'm glad you're here, Diego. And Tamayo says, "Challenge accepted." So yeah, so we did that last weekend. We drove to South Carolina, trailered the car back, helped him with his house a little bit. And then the weeks before that, my grandmother, my mother's side, listing her house for sale as well. She's a widow, and my grandfather passed away a couple of years ago, and so we're just getting the house ready for her. So we did a little bit of work there, helping for a weekend, but my parents did a lot of work on the house to help get that thing through. into, you know, up for sale. So that's what we've been doing, working on our house and helping others work on their houses. So we're doing our best to still get some videos up, but I missed the past couple weeks. So we have something really cool coming up this weekend. I should be done with that samurai sword epoxy wall mount. It looks like a river table, but it has the purple reef color in the for the river, and it has the black walnut lumber. So it's really pretty. Diego says, gracias, thank you. That's all I got. Steve said, that's real steel. That's right. And Steve says, it's all about family. That's right, guys. It's all about family. And that's what I did. I took a couple weeks to help them. Well, I had, you know, had to do stuff for our house too. But so once again, I want to get to what's going on in the Goodview Woodworks shop. We have a few projects going on, a couple of charcuterie boards. We're really working on giveaways. I want this thing to be right when we start doing the giveaways. So we've been working on that for like a long time. We've had a few issues with pigments and epoxy. I don't know if you guys know this, but there has been a epoxy shortage, according to Incredible Solutions. And so they're trying their best to get everything shipped out, but obviously there's a shortage for most of the people in the epoxy world. So also, I had a couple of issues with pigments not getting to where they're supposed to be, and things getting mixed up during shipment. So we had some of that going on. Jennifer says, so New Hampshire here, still trying some small stuff while I'm learning the epoxy quirks. Yep, Jennifer, she was the first person to take advantage of our Patreon page, and we did like a live stream, like a one-on-one consultation, and she asked a bunch of questions. It was really fun, and apparently she learned a lot, so she says, and she's really been encouraging me to step up my game on my channel, and also she has been supporting the Goodview Woodworks channel for a long time. So Jennifer, I want to thank you so much for always commenting and supporting us over on Patreon. So if you guys don't know, go over to patreon.com/GoodviewWoodworks if you want to support the channel as well. All right, let's get to the content of this video, okay? So the title reads, is it worth using name brand tools for the epoxy and woodworking? So if you guys saw in the thumbnail, we had the Bosch sander and the beginning, well actually it's almost the end of that project for the samurai sword. And I want to hear your thoughts real quick. Leave a comment and let me know, what do you think? Is it worth buying the name brand stuff even though it's more expensive and stuff? Let me hear what you have to say really quick before I give my 2 cents on that. So let me see right here. I'm gonna see if I can translate this. I want to help get this guy, see what he says. So I'm gonna try to enter the text. And see what he said here. Okay, she's giving a shout out to his page. I got you. All right. Gemma says, I had a pigment problem too. 2 packages with the same name, Kiwi, but totally different colors. Weird. In my mind, yes, but in my wallet, not often. Okay, so she's answering the question. In her mind, it is makes sense to buy name brand, but in wallet, not often. So I want to give you guys my quick answer here, and my answer is, well, both. And here's what I mean. I don't think it's worth it to buy a bunch of name brand tools if this is just a hobby and something that you're not doing often. I don't think it's necessarily worth the money. And if you're only doing a couple of epoxy tables, one or two maybe, you can get away with using some of the cheaper, and what I mean by that is less expensive tools. I've been using less expensive tools for a long time, but when I decided to make the jump into a business, it definitely makes more sense to start using name brand tools, and I'll tell you why. So using cheaper tools, it works for a really long time. So if you're doing one table here and there, it really doesn't matter. But if you start, especially with like a sander, now if you use a sander like the Bosch or the Festool, those sanders really work. I mean, they cut sanding time by 50 to 75%. And when you're working like a business, time is money. Okay, everyone knows that. What I will say though is you can get away with using smaller tools, and that's kind of what the channel is about, right? Is to show you guys how to use what you have to make some epoxy tables. Now, obviously, my tools have upgraded over the years. But I was using a table saw, circular saw, sander, a few chisels, things like that, and I was able to produce quite a few nice tables. Now, James says, start with lower price tools to start, then reinvest in selling back, if selling back into grow. That's right. So he's saying if you're selling it, then you can reinvest the money back into the business. That's exactly what I did. So obviously, I don't think it's smart to just jump out there, especially if you don't have any clients, to start buying all the tools. I think that would be a waste of money. However, if you do have the ability to reinvest your money, I think it's vitally important to start buying tools that will help you do your job more efficiently. So for example, that sander is $300 on Amazon, compared to the $50 DeWalt 5-inch sander I was using before. Now, did the 5-inch DeWalt sander work? Yes, it did. But I was spending a lot of time sanding. The Bosch GET, I think it's GET S75-6N, I think is what it is. It's a 6-inch sander. It has this, it's called turbo mode, and really what it does, it sands more aggressively with the same sandpaper, and it cuts my time down by 50 to 75%. So that really saves some time and money when it comes to, even though it's $300 according to $50, my labor rate, when I'm spending and I'm charging the customer for labor, that right there, it really saves some money and saves some time for myself. I'm not using as many sanding pads. I'm not going through as many of those. I'm also cutting down time, other time that I can use to make other stuff at the same time. Carrie says, I have used Harbor Freight for now with good turnaround time. However, getting good quality sandpaper has made a huge difference in sanding. Cheap sandpaper takes more time and materials. Carrie is absolutely right, especially when it comes to sandpaper. Now, I will say, with this sander that I was using, the Bosch, for example, I was using cheaper sandpaper, like the Diablo stuff from Home Depot, and it was powering through some of this stuff, and I had it just depends on what style of sandpaper you have. Obviously, the better the sandpaper, obviously the less you're going to use, and especially what she was saying, less time and materials. I will say the tool makes all the difference in the world, especially when you use one. Aaron Hungay says, yo, what's up, Aaron? And then Jennifer says, Fright, LOL, Harbor Freight. I will say tools make all the difference in the world as well. Now Harbor Freight is cool too, because obviously they have lifetime warranty on their stuff. But when it comes to like the Festool and the Bosch and things like that, they also have they have warranty on their tools. Obviously not lifetime. I think it's 3 years for the Bosch. I'm not sure what it is for the Festool. But they do last longer. I have had some Harbor Freight tools that quit after a couple of uses. So Aaron says, I've been waiting for a video from you about this for a while. Now, I will say, so here's some other things too. One of the biggest tools that I bought recently, I haven't used in a video yet, but I bought the TS75 Festool track saw. Here's why. I have a project coming up and that is the only saw, only track saw in production that will cut 2 inches deep on a 45. At least what I found through searching the internet. I've tried to find everything. I've searched everywhere, and I could not find a track saw to cut 2 inches on a 45. It actually cuts 2 1/8 inch on a 45. And so that was a necessity. That was an expensive tool. It was $800. But I'll be making that in the profit of this table, and so it was totally worth it. So I did one job in order to buy this tool, and I have this tool to use from now on. Now the reason why I needed that tool was to do a waterfall table. We're going to do a double waterfall table. No epoxy this time. Sorry, you epoxy guys, you epoxy freaks. I feel like you guys won't watch a video if it doesn't have epoxy in it. And so I have this big piece of butternut. We're going to do a double waterfall table, but I needed something that will cut a 45 and cut it straight. And so tools do matter. And also when you start getting into production stuff, saving time is saving money, and that's because you can do multiple projects at once. Jennifer says, I've tried the Abernet sandpaper and I really like it compared to paper-backed paper, sandpaper. Yes, I will say, though, what I don't like about that paper is that when it comes to the epoxy, it really gums up with the epoxy. Because, and here's my theory on this, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I have found in my experience is that because it's like a screen, it's multiple small holes, it's easier for the dust to get trapped in the small holes rather than the paper that you see has like 6 or 8 larger holes in the pad. The vacuum can suck it through the bigger holes much easier than it can the small. At least that's what I've found. Let me know what you think. You think I'm wrong there? But that's just the experience I've had. I actually had a guy comment on a video when I was sanding and I lifted it up and there was nothing stuck to the paper. He said, what kind of wizardry is this? And I think that's just because using a vacuum on the sander really helps draw all that sawdust away. But it's harder with the Abernet, and that's because the holes are much smaller because it's a screen. So it can pull more. Obviously the flow is down though, right? CFM, all that kind of stuff matters. Troy says, what's up, Nate from Louisiana? About to try some Osmo finish. What do you think of Osmo? I think Osmo is a great finish. I do like Osmo. I've only used it once though, and I want to use it some more before I post a video up on it. I think Osmo is great because you can buff Osmo. You can add as many layers as you want, bring up the shine, and it's really nice that way. As it compares to the Rubio, and this is just my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong as well, but I think the Rubio has a harder finish than the Osmo. But, you know, it is what it is. If somebody wanted a more glossy finish, but they wanted an oil finish, I would go with Osmo over Rubio, and that's just because you can't really get the Rubio up past a satin finish. Aaron says, using a vacuum is laughable when sanding. You will love the track saw. I have TS75. Tracks aren't cheap, but it's way safer, and you will notice it fast. Aaron, what do you mean? What do you mean that using a vacuum is laughable? What I meant was a dust collector. I just didn't say dust collector. I said vacuum because more people understand what that means. Steve says, what do you use to prevent scratches on your epoxy table? Well, the finish matters. If you're using an epoxy finish, it's gonna scratch. Epoxy has some scratch resistance to it, but if you have kids or something like that and they're dragging stuff across the table, it's gonna scratch. The way that I keep it from scratching is I'm just careful, and I like to use a little harder finishes sometimes. If you guys have watched my channel, I know how to do an epoxy finish and I can do it well. I don't really like epoxy finishes. That's my opinion. I think they have their place, but I would recommend, there are some finishes out there that go on top of an epoxy finish that you can use to keep it more scratch resistant, okay? So hopefully that helps. Kula from Cyprus. What's up, Kula? It's a long time no see. Haven't heard from you in a while. All the way from Cyprus. That's awesome. Lee Ferry says, "Hey Nathan, will humidity have curing effect?" Um, Lee, I think you may be talking about epoxy, and yes, humidity does mess with the curing of the epoxy. What I have found though is it really has to do with more with the wood than the epoxy. Excuse me. And the temperature matters more. I live in a really humid place. I live on the East Coast, and it's very humid here. I noticed that the epoxy gets harder quicker, doesn't stay tacky as long in a less humid environment if I'm working in a climate controlled area than it will be in a humid area, but it still seems to be fine. Obviously, you don't want the wood to be wet. When you epoxy, it'll cause foam and bubbles and things like that. But as far as temperature, I think would be better. The hotter it is, the faster it's going to flash and cause cracks and that sort of thing. But my thing is that if you're pouring a lot of epoxy at one time, you want to keep the temperature down as much as you can, around the 60-degree area. And if you're pouring something 2 inches thick or more, I recommend a fan and possibly an AC window unit if you've seen me do that before to keep the temperatures down. Jennifer says ceramic coating will give you a harder finish, I think. And yes, there are ceramic coatings that will give you a harder finish, but some of the automotive ceramic coatings are more for like water dissipation. It will still scratch with that ceramic coating because it's not fully ceramic. It has ceramic in it. But there are other finishes. I'll have to get back on those finishes because I forgot the term. It's poly something or other, but it's made to go on top of epoxy finishes. I'll have to get back with you on that one. I have some over there, but I haven't, that a company has sent me, but I haven't used it yet. And so I'll have a video coming out on that as well. Great questions, guys. If you have more questions, please shoot. This is a Q&A session. And so ask me whatever that pertains to, woodworking, business stuff, that kind of thing. Den Bird, hey, how are you? Says, can you recommend a place to get stickers / labels to put on products? Hey, Den, give me an example of what kind of sticker / label you mean. If you're wanting to put your own logo on a piece that you're building, I would recommend just like a vinyl shop. Any sign company that does vinyl, you can have them print up whatever. You need to use some sort of vector file. That's what they need to be able to plot out the vinyl. But if that's not what you mean, let me know. Great questions, guys. I really appreciate it. All right, so I had one guy comment recently about Rubio Monocoat, and he really just kind of bombed my comment section saying, do not use Rubio Monocoat on anything that's going to touch food because it's not food safe. None of that. So stop using it on charcuterie boards or what have you. However, if you go to Rubio's website, they do they have said that it's food safe to use for to lay food on. It says do not prep food on it. Obviously, you don't want to do that because of things that may occur, but it's perfectly safe to serve food on. And so that's all we're using it for anyway. It was funny because I linked it in the comment under his comment, and I never got a reply. So I wonder what he said. Denver says, I make my own beeswax cutting board treatment. I'm looking for something to label the cans. Oh, okay. So that is way different. When it comes to private labeling, I am not the person to talk to because the tape that I had that I'm working with the company for private labeling, they had the equipment that put all that stuff on there. And so I would reach out to a company that does private labeling and have them do that. That's the only advice I have for you. That's what I did with the tape. So hopefully that helps. I'm sorry, I don't have a whole lot of experience with private labeling. Daniel Duckworth says, I notice you have 2 shops. Daniel, you are right. And the shop that I have at my house, that's just an old barn with a lean-to that I worked out of for years. But because of situations at home with having 2 babies, I needed to not be there and just not waste time driving back and forth. And so this is where I work my full-time job. And the owner of the company is he's the best guy I've ever worked for. Awesome dude, and he lets me use our shop to build some stuff and do live streams. So I don't actually have 2 shops. My boss is just very kind and lets me use the shop that we work in. Larry Simmons, hopefully that answers your question, Daniel. Larry Simmons says, hello from San Diego, Nathan. What's up, Larry? And Steve says, how do you figure out prices for tables? Steve, that is a great loaded question. Okay. So I'm going to set this up for you. I do have a video on this exact subject, so you guys can check that out. But here's the quick way. 1, you need to figure out how much you want to pay yourself hourly. I need to come up with an hourly rate. Every shop, well, most shops have an hourly rate, whether that's automotive, whether that's woodworking, what have you. They have a labor rate. So first thing you need to figure out for yourself is what do you want for your own labor? What is your time worth? Once you figure that out, you need to time yourself building a table, and don't go off the very first one you've ever done, obviously, because you don't have the experience yet. Do a couple of them. When you start becoming comfortable, then time yourself to see how quickly you can produce a table. And I'm not talking about do it as fast as you can either, because this is something that you want to kind of pace yourself and work to get it down. Kind of figure out how much time it takes you to build a table if that's what you're building. Figure out what your labor is worth, okay? So you have your time, your labor. The other thing is the cost of materials. You always want to add some on top of materials, because it costs you for shipping, for driving to pick up the materials, for whatever, cost to run the shop, whatever it is. Materials still cost you outside of their price, their wholesale price or retail price, whatever you're buying it for. They cost you in other ways. So you want to add 10 to 15% on top. At least that's what I do. And then thirdly, so you have materials cost, you have your labor rate and time, and also I would also add, like if you talking about an itemized list, you need to add like, what is it called? Miscellaneous. I have a miscellaneous in there, and that's because it's usually for hardware, things like that, sandpaper, whatever, that aren't necessarily included in the materials for the project, right? Because most people just think epoxy, they think the lumber, they think, just the materials to build that. But you do need to add on to that with the miscellaneous stuff that you use throughout the project. Hopefully that helps, Steve. Jennifer says, Den, if you have a decent printer, pick up some Avery labels anywhere that sells office supplies. Avery has free templates, etc. Make it easy to make on your own. And she also says, or just do a search for custom stickers and they'll start showing up in your feeds. Daniel Duckworth says, is the lumber shortage affecting your business? No, from what I found out, Daniel, that slabs, I still can find plenty of slabs and the price hasn't gone up. And it's the lumber for, it's contractor stuff is what they're using. That's what's going up in price, and stuff you find at Home Depot, 2x4s, 2x8s, those kind of things. Howard says, I know you said on your vids, but can you quickly go over polishing or sanding before pouring top coat, or as you've recommended, casting as top coat, please? Okay. So as far as casting, I did use a casting epoxy as a top coat. I would not recommend it. And here's a couple of reasons why. One, it's too thin. Okay, it wants to continue leveling out and it wants to roll off and it doesn't stay. It takes a long time to set up. Okay, so tabletop, I would definitely go with that. I wouldn't use, only if you have the casting epoxy would I use that, but I would use the casting epoxy more for sealing the surface in prep for a tabletop epoxy. However, sanding and polishing, here's a quick thing. When you want to sand and polish before pouring a top coat, there is no polishing before you pour a top coat. Sand to 220 and that's it. Wipe the dust and you're ready for a flood coat. But if you're wanting to polish the surface after a top coat, what I recommend, Incredible Solutions just came out with a new polishing compound, and the trick is to sand it up through to about 4,000 grit. So you're going to go from 120, 220, 320, 400, and then switch over to an Abralon disc and with wet, like water, and you're going to sand with the 400 up through the 400 up through the 4,000 that it comes with. Okay, once you're done with that, then you can apply the polish and buff it. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so Troy says, I'm looking for a way to mark my work with a brand or a stamp. What do you recommend? Thinking about a metal plate and screw them on it. Well, that would probably be really expensive. But I have a metal brand, a Goodview Woodworks brand, and it was about $300, I think, because I got the one that's electric. You plug it in, you don't have to heat it with a torch and all that. You heat it up, let it sit, press it down, and it works really well. So I would recommend that. The metal badge thing is really cool. I just think that somebody's not going to make a couple of them for you. You probably have to purchase a large quantity of them. So that could be kind of expensive. Steve No says, what's the price for stress on taking on the challenge? Well, I mean, that's just part of the course, I guess. Jennifer says, Etsy has a lot of options for branding irons or coin-sized tags in different materials. So Howard O says, awesome. Lee Ferry says, what's a good speed for polishing? That's a really good question. As far as polishing the epoxy, I stick to like the 1100 or 1200 RPM range. It keeps you from burning up your pad and messing up the surface of the epoxy because you don't want it to get too hot. So like the 1200 range seems to work really well. You could probably go up to 1500, but you know, really it's just whatever you're comfortable with, and you want to be able to move across the surface in a even motion without getting a certain spot too hot, which means you got to have polish on the pad. You don't want it to be dry. You also don't want to go too fast. So hopefully that helps. Guys, this has been an awesome Shop Talk Tuesday. Thank you for all the questions. I really appreciate it. If you have any other questions, go ahead and shoot them up here. I'll try to get to them as quickly as I can. If you want to support the channel, as always, share the videos. That's the biggest way you can support this channel is sharing my YouTube videos. Share them on wherever you want to share them, Facebook, any social medias. I appreciate that. If you want to support us over on Patreon, go to patreon.com/GoodviewWoodworks. There's 4 tiers that you can go and support the channel through that. We also have a website. And we're going to start offering, I'll list it up on the website, but we're going to start offering one-on-one consultations as well. And if you want to support the channel, you can do that too, okay? So, let me get to a couple of last comments. Jeremy P says later. All right, Jeremy, see you later, man. Lee Ferry says, what's a good polisher? Really, you can buy an automotive polisher from Amazon. They work really well. As far as a polisher goes, they seem to work pretty well, most of the automotive ones. So I would go with that. And Jennifer says, Nathan, can you go back to my last flashing? I don't know what that means, but if you could help me answer that. Steve says, thank you for doing this. You're awesome and your sweatshirts are fantastic. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that, man. And Kula says, thank you. Bye-bye. All right, Kula, I will see you on the next one as well. Thank you for joining us this week. Guys, you're awesome. Like I said, this is one of my favorite times during the week. And so we're going to get some videos up for you. And so hopefully you like those videos. Like I said, biggest thing is share the videos. I would really appreciate that. It helps the channel a lot. So you guys rock, and I will catch you on the next one. Thanks for hanging out with us. I will talk to you later. Good night. Love you. Mean it.